Hello, my name is Susan, and welcome to the show All About Artists. My guest today is Ellen Joffe Elpern, a very talented, expressive art therapist, art teacher, and artist from Williamstown. Welcome to the show, Ellen.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Before we start, I want to thank Dave Fabiano, Joanna Holbert, and Nicole Brown for making this show possible. Without them, there would be no show, so thank you so very much. Ellen, can you tell us, how did you start painting?
Well, I was never really interested in art as far as I knew as a kid, but my father was a doctor and he worked a lot, the old-fashioned kind. He did house calls and all
Right.
7 days a week, and painting was his hobby. And we were going on vacation to the Cape, and to this day, I don't know why he said to me, as opposed to my siblings, he asked me if I wanted to join him. He was going to take some lessons at an art school there. And I said yes, not because I cared about painting, I didn't know anything about it, but because I could spend time with him. And so I went, and the teacher, Wallace Bassford, he was called an American Impressionist. And I got hooked. I could only draw at first, and all around me, everybody was painting with colors, and I knew if I did a really good drawing, he was going to let me paint too. And from that time, that just got me started, and I'm still just excited about it.
I know what you're talking about. I know that feeling. Ellen, can you tell our audience about your professional career as an expressive art therapist, art teacher, and artist?
Well, I started off painting, and of course had to make a choice at some point as I was finishing college of trying to make it as a painter, or I'd heard about the profession of expressive arts therapist, and I had a lot of caring for other people and interest in their stories since I was little. And so I decided to look into it. I did some volunteering at the no longer existing Boston State Hospital in Dorchester, which was for children and adolescents.
Okay.
And I said I went then on to Lesley College, who had a program for expressive arts therapists, and some programs are just for art, using art, but this one emphasized using all the expressive modalities, such as writing, artwork. I added gardening, anything.
Oh, yeah, gardening is.
It is, isn't it?
Of course it is.
Even cooking.
And cooking, right?
Sure. So, and moving, music, had wonderful experiences. And I started my career working in residential treatment schools for adolescents. And I've worked in various psychiatric units in hospitals, including North Adams.
Oh, really? You did? In North Adams?
Yes, they had
Oh, I didn't know that.
the hospital,
Yeah.
the Reach.
Yes.
Yes.
That's nice because now it's becoming a hospital again, isn't
It
that?
is. I don't
isn't
think
that
they're
exciting?
bringing the psychiatric unit back.
Yeah, I know the Greylock Pavilion,
Greylock
correct?
Pavilion, yes.
Yes.
As well as a few others. So I never stopped in my heart to be an artist, but working so intensely, most of the painting was done in my head at that point, which is really easier than putting it on canvas. But it's a complicated profession, and there's many ways to approach it. My approach was to really help folks connect with their creativity, but to also provide them another way to tell us what's going on, and more important, to tell themselves. So some art therapists may look at a picture and would interpret it and say, well, because they used the brown crayon, it meant they're depressed.
Yeah.
But
Oh.
I didn't go with that, but rather if someone used a brown crayon, I'd say, why did you make that choice? What is it about that brown crayon? What did it add to the picture? So that it was really to help people, on one hand, better understand themselves. I used to tell my husband, who was a social worker there at one point, and then I said, you talkies, you don't get the truth. And when people create something, it's always the truth.
It is always the truth.
Yes.
And some people, they can look at something and draw it, but when it comes from within and then onto the paper, or from the crayon, instead of looking at something, it tells you something about the person also, I think.
That's right. And I think part of my job was to give people the confidence. So many people would tell me, well, I can't do this, I can't do that, but to give them the confidence that in their own way they could. And then the second part of it for me was also to provide material, in addition to the expressive material, to provide material that would give success, that someone could create something that they would feel proud of, or maybe give as a gift to their child. So some of what we would call the crafts. So that was another piece of it. And also there's the piece of relaxation. We all know everybody could use more of that, relaxation techniques. And that certainly lends
Kind of
itself
like,
to that.
like a meditation. Or when you're,
Well, there's different ones.
is there one of the, I was just thinking of that myself.
That can be for some people.
Can it be for some people?
People who are in crisis, however, it's hard to settle one's mind.
Yes.
So internally, whereas if I would do taking colored pencils with abstract designs that they could color in, and it gets very rhythmic. So in some ways it's a meditation, but a meditation on paper and with that rhythm of coloring in.
I understand now. Yeah.
And then, or it could be listening to music. I did a lot of journal writing, poetry writing, all those things. Movement somehow was less successful. People would be more self-conscious.
Self-conscious. Ellen, can you please tell us about your artwork?
Well, I would love to. But maybe I'll start with these two flower paintings, because during COVID, especially, and because I had more time to paint, because I retired during COVID, I was still working part-time in a different sort of job, working with families, but I had more time to paint and be more reflective myself. And so this was done, both of these were done in a similar time, but this was done first, and it was after COVID, and things had been freeing up, and I just went wild. And I do love painting flowers. I usually paint from looking at flowers or from sketches that I've made of flowers, but I don't hold to the truth, just to my own interpretation of what it could be, and I do love working with colors. Last August, my husband passed away, as you know.
Yeah, I know him.
Yes.
He's a wonderful man.
Thank you.
He was so helpful to me, and I just want you to know.
Well, thank you. It meant a lot to him, his work. But it took me a long time to get back into painting, to get to my studio, or I would go in and I couldn't do anything. And someone had given me a bouquet of flowers, and I decided to take it into my studio. And I painted this.
It's beautiful.
And what I noticed, because we were talking about art therapy, and I intentionally wanted to leave the background rather empty because of that emptiness I was feeling. But he was a big fan of mine. He was very supportive. So, but then after I noticed that there were these two big flowers on top, and one was, as you can see, the leaves are floating away.
Yeah.
And then we have two children who are both married. and I have 6 grandchildren. What I didn't notice until later, because I hung it in my house, that if I count the flowers, in addition to those 2 atop, there are 4 large flowers
Yeah.
and 6 small flowers. And I thought, yes, that's the unconscious
The unconscious.
that we were talking about, how it will come out in art.
Right.
So the painting became more precious to me when I realized what I was doing.
Let's see what the one in back of you I was really curious about.
So I used to do a lot of figure drawing, paintings of figures. And this one was a model who was, and this one I had done long ago. I don't want to say how many years, but probably 50, perhaps.
I know that we can't say that. We always say 40, 50 instead of 10 or 20.
But I was, again, because during COVID, I was sorting through some older paintings and trying to clean out a little bit. And I noticed this one, which I'd always liked, and it was just the figure, and indeed, the model was holding a flute.
Food.
And I've always been interested in mythology. And I have a whole series of drawings of mythological figures. And Pan, as you may know, played the flute, and he was in charge of bringing flowers and spring and growing things. So this is collaged on. So this background is oil paint.
That is collaged on.
And
I didn't notice.
I changed some of the colors, the blue robe for the sky, and collaged these flowers as if coming from his flute. There's new growth.
Oh, yeah.
And I brought it
can
today
see that.
because it's time to think about planting and think about spring coming, growing things.
So wonderful. I didn't pick up on the collage. I didn't pick up on it. It just looked so into the painting. You know, how you did a wonderful job like that.
Thank you. I do enjoy
I would
mixing
never-
media.
Yeah, that you
doing
mixed
different
media. Yes,
type
definitely.
And this one here is also a mixed media. It's acrylic paint,
Acrylic.
pencil, charcoal, and scratching in. This is North Adams, because we're here in North Adams. And these are 4 views from the Eclipse Mill. And the Eclipse Mill, as you know, is a live-in, work-in space for artists, and I was visiting friends. Most of my work is done from sketches. I do a lot of sketching of drawing. So in this painting, I want to put in a lot of that drawing that I do in my sketchbook into the work itself. So there's a lot of scratching in and drawing to make the line and the position. This was a project I did of 4 views, wherever I went, to stand in one place and do drawing from that one place and complete 4. So I'm looking at the same thing, but seeing it in different ways.
Different ways. Yes, I can see that.
Yes, and then have them fit together at the same time.
And then it's almost like the puzzle there. Each piece is how they, but they're making one.
Exactly, exactly. And sometimes I was putting them in a show, so I had to frame them. Sometimes I leave them unframed and then move them around different places in relation to each other, and it gives it a different
Oh,
view.
I see. Yes.
So that if this one was here instead of there, it would look different.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I understand. Oh, that would be. That one was up there, and that one was down there. I'm turning it around in my own mind. I'm turning them.
But
That's
North
how we-
Adams is such a beautiful city and so
It
many
is.
interesting shapes. And at this point, this is the roof is no longer there.
But
That's also on Union Street. But there's just so much in the buildings and, of course, the spires and part of North Adams. And so that was rich to draw.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And another, I should have spoken of this before spring came, because this one, of course, was winter.
And
And what I did, as you may notice, I love color.
yes.
And I sometimes like to give myself a challenge, and I think we all need to challenge ourselves in one way or another.
Yes. And when did you do this one?
This one, the
And-
paint is barely dry. This I just did 2 weeks ago.
Oh, really?
And I gave myself the challenge of limiting my palette. And the second challenge was when I was in art school, again, way back, we were taught never to use black paint from the tube. Because although we look great in black,
Yes.
but light is shining and bringing out color. But when you use black paint, in theory we were taught, it's very flat. But really black holds a lot of different things when the light hits it. But I was so daring and bold, I used black paint.
Well, good for you. I
And
think it's
so that was my
interesting.
challenge, to limit. I had only used 3 colors, black, white, and
the
blue.
gray.
I
And the
made it.
blue and the gray. Is that blue
Well, I
and gray? A
mixed it.
little gray? I see.
By mixing.
By mixing.
So
The mix.
there were only 3 tubes of color, and that was my challenge. And I had done a series of sketches of bare trees and the patterns and the rhythms that were in there.
So how did you get started painting?
From that, from learning from Wallace Bassford, and I ended up, the first school I went with my dad, but I ended up working for him for a number of summers. It was just a summer-only school, and I managed his school. And my job was, he came and went, and the students were there painting all day. We painted in the morning a model, and in the afternoon sometimes we went outside or we did still lifes or flowers. And my job was to be there and paint. So 5 days a week I was painting every day, and I think that's the best place to learn. But I did go on in college. I majored in painting and have a BFA in painting.
Oh, in painting, really? That's
Yeah, so
That's impressive.
but I think the most I learned from Mr. Bassford, who really knew how to mix colors and really knew what paint can do, oil paint.
yeah. That's one thing I never tried was oil. I always wanted to, but it dried. It doesn't dry as fast as
That's
acrylics.
right. You have to be very patient.
You got to be very patient, I think. So maybe now, as I've gotten older, I might be a little bit more patient.
Well, it's very different way to paint. As a matter of fact, these paintings behind you here are acrylic. The small one is acrylic. This one is a mixture of acrylic paint, the larger one, acrylic paint, and house paint. That is actually the color of
Really?
my house, and I had some extra paint. But being mass mocha and brick, and to get that
That look.
look,
Yeah, the real paint. That makes sense.
yeah. But I think there is no better way to learn than just paint. Just try it, be brave, be
And be
bold.
brave and bold and just do it.
That's right.
Yeah, and it was kind of like you say, brave and bold. I was on this other show and somebody told me, well, it was Dick DeSati. He said, "Susan, why don't you have an art show?" And I said to myself, I can't do that. I said, well, Susan, what do you do? Things you can't do,
That's
right?
right.
And you think you can't, get bold, And I said, well, I'm going to get bold.
Good for you.
So here I am.
Then you
And
do.
here you are, and it's just so wonderful.
Well, it's a wonderful idea for you to do this and really let artists talk, because everyone has their own beginning, their own views on what they want to accomplish and how they go about doing it.
What were your early influences?
Picasso was a big influence, and not that I love all his work, but what I like about him and what I try to do is he never stopped exploring what art can do. He tried so many different styles. He worked with so many different material. And I can't quote him exactly, but he said, he talked about one should paint as a child, be childlike. And the way I interpret that, some people think, well, he does. His paintings look like children, but they don't. I think what he wanted to say was, when you're painting or you're looking at the world around you, be curious like a child, be open-minded like a child, and take it in that way. And that's, I do try to do that, to approach each one freshly.
How do you price your art?
That's
And how can people get in touch with you?
well, I try to keep my prices affordable, but also the cost of materials and so forth, and as well as my time. I do have a studio in the Norred Mill, and it's open when the lights are on. So if I'm in there, everybody's welcome just to come and chat. I love that when people come in and we talk about things, but my work is for sale. And again, since COVID, I've not been looking into exhibiting. I
Yeah,
used to.
everybody's kind of.
Gone back, but I used to exhibit, but they are on exhibit in my studio at the Norred Mill.
I'll have to come and see them.
Please do. I don't have regular hours, but because I'm involved in some other things, so,
Yeah.
but you can make an appointment, anyone can, ellenjoffe@gmail.com.
Ellen Joffe at
Gmail.
gmail.com. Well, I think I'd get a hold of you.
Please do. It would be, I'd love to
It's a
come
wonderful,
and hear more
interesting
about
work. And people can definitely learn a lot from you as a, expressive artist. No, I'm a therapist, Susan. Come on. Art therapist,
Yes.
art teacher.
Yes, I've taught.
And, people can learn a lot from you.
Well, I love teaching. I love sharing my passion for art with people, but also really encouraging that everybody starts in their own place. And that's important.
How do you keep going and creating? Some people stop at certain points, but how do you, push yourself, or do you have to, or is it just something that you just passionate and you just do it and do it and do it and do it and do it?
No. As you said, sometimes it's harder to keep going, or you think, what am I going to do next? And as I've mentioned, I keep a sketchbook, and that helps me a great deal. And sometimes I just go through sketchbooks that I've done a while ago and think, oh yeah, that was a great idea. Why don't I finally do it? So it really, often I have to push myself. And my studio, I have a very comfortable chair that I just sit there, and if I'm not painting, I'm thinking about it, and I'm musing to be my own muse.
Your own muse.
Because I don't have one. So
I don't have one either, my own.
So we have to be our own muse.
We have to
but
be our
just
own.
I think when I taught in high school, the first class, what I would do is I'd tell everybody, I gave them 1 minute, and I'd say, write down everything you see in this room. And after a minute, I asked everyone to read their lists, and of course, people saw different things.
Oh, yes.
And they would be surprised, well, I didn't see that, I didn't notice that, but what I did notice. And I said, okay, that's it, you've learned. This is the lesson. Art is about seeing.
Yeah, I can't get across that idea so much to people out there that don't understand art. And when they look at a piece of artwork, it's like, oh, what's this? And sometimes you didn't see it. You know, so it's, I like that concept. You know, it is art. I mean, how did you make art lend to your, excuse me, professional life as an expressive art therapist? Art lead to your professional life?
Well, I think that's part of who I am. I think I am deeply feel as an artist, even if I'm not creating or if I only create for myself. And I feel what it does for me. And so,
It makes you happy.
well, it gives me
Does it make you-
contentment. It gives me all kinds of feelings.
I bet I was just going to ask you that.
Yes,
I bet it gives you all kinds of feelings.
Right. And it's when I'm there in my studio, I'm fortunate that I have a space separate, so I'm not distracted by other things, and I play music usually.
Oh,
That-
that's interesting.
What else is going around, I can put aside for that time and just be me and be in there. And I actually even dance in my studio as I'm dancing into the music. But that's what it does for me. So that's why I liked the profession of expressive arts therapist so much, because I could give that, share that with other people and their journey.
What is an expressive artist, and with whom did you work with? What ages and in what settings? Or did I ask that already?
Well, we talked a little bit about
I
that,
think we already
but I
did.
do believe it can be useful at any age.
At any age. Do you think even like 2 or 3 or even
Yes.
young? Yeah, they
Well,
can
in a
really-
different
is
way.
that in a different way?
You
I was
know.
wondering if younger children, you know, because
Well,
I don't know that much about that.
So, for
particular-
example, and it's related in some ways to occupational therapy,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to use the motions of drawing when they're little.
Oh,
You
yeah.
can't do small things, but
No.
if they need help with fine motor, you can adapt to that way.
Mm-hmm.
You can help with self-soothing for children, which is an important skill to have for children and everyone. So there are ways, depending on the age and depending on the need.
You worked in schools as an art teacher. How does these 3 areas overlap?
That's a good question, and I
You know what? We only have about 20 seconds left.
very quickly, it's where my ego is.
Okay.
When I'm an artist, the ego's on me. When I'm working with others, it has to be put aside, and I have to be working with who that person is.
Oh, well, it was wonderful having you.
Well, thank you so much, and
Oh, and it's
really
been-
enjoyed the conversation.
Me too. Bye, folks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.